Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into a book that has certainly made waves. The Real Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the Global War on Democracy and Public Health by Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah, it's definitely sparked a lot of debate.
It has. It presents a profoundly critical view, and our mission today is simply to explore the specific claims and arguments the author makes.
Right, focusing on what the book actually says about power, profits, public health, directly from the text.
Yeah, exactly. It's a dense read, pretty challenging, so we're here to sort of distill its core assertions for you.
Okay.
So, right off the bat, the book opens with this central claim about what it calls regulatory capture in public health agencies.
Yeah, and what's really striking is how quickly the author argues for these deep financial links between big pharma and government bodies, CDC, NIH, FDA.
Well-
The CDC owns 57 vaccine patents, and it spends a huge chunk of its budget. The book cites $4.9 billion out of $12 billion in 2019 just buying and distributing vaccines.
Buying pharma, presumably.
That's the implication. The NIH also owns hundreds of vaccine patents and often profits from the very things it's supposed to be regulating.
And it gets personal too, right? The book names names, including Dr. Fauci.
It does. It claims high-level officials, Fauci included, get these yearly payments, emoluments. The book calls them up to $150,000 in royalties.
Royalties on products they help develop and get approved.
That's the assertion in the book, yeah.
And how does this connect to the bigger picture, like the FDA?
Well, the book highlights the FDA getting 45% of its budget from the pharmaceutical industry through these things called user fees.
Okay.
And it poses this rhetorical question. What if the EPA got 45% of its funding from the coal industry?
Right. Think about potential conflicts of interest.
Exactly. The author argues this is why American health is suffering, that these agencies have effectively become subsidiaries of Big Pharma. The core idea presented is systemic financial conflicts undermining their mission.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Then the book zooms in on the COVID-19 pandemic and Dr. Fauci's role specifically. And it's quite a departure from the public image many people had.
Oh, absolutely. The author acknowledges that initial image, the calm, authoritative, avuncular manner.
Yeah, the I Heart Fauci pillows, the In Fauci We Trust mugs.
Yeah, but this very image was sort of leveraged to, and this is a direct quote, orchestrate and execute 2020's historic coup d'etat against Western democracy.
Wow, that's a strong claim.
Very strong. Asserting his strategies consistently put pharma profits and bureaucratic powers ahead of public health.
So based on that view, how does the book critique the actual policies like lockdowns?
It's highly critical. The book contends that Fauci's unprecedented quarantine of the healthy would kill far more people than COVID
Kill more people.
by obliterating the economy and damaging democracy. It cites a BMJ study from June 2021 suggesting U.S. life expectancy dropped 1.9 years during the quarantine period.
Okay.
And it links lockdowns to other harms, too. Claims suicide rates among kids rose 50%. Babies born during quarantine averaged 22 IQ points lower. 93,000 overdose deaths in the U.S. in 2020.
Serious social costs there.
Right. And it points out Fauci saying he doesn't give advice about economic things, while the book holds him responsible for these alleged economic and social consequences.
What about masks? Another big one. What's the book's take on mask mandates?
It argues the science didn't support them, basically. It says peer-reviewed literature, including a big study of 10 million in Wuhan, didn't find masking healthy people effective.
Yeah.
And it claims there were 52 studies on the NIH website showing that ordinary masks, not N95s, didn't cut viral infection rates.
And it also mentions harms for masks.
Yeah, it cites 25 other studies that showed a grim retinue of harms. Plus, it claims a regional U.S. analysis showed mandates didn't affect case rates, even with high compliance.
So the book is essentially saying that data didn't back up these major policies.
Yeah.
Which leads to the question of how data was used.
Right. The book talks about noble lies and blatant and relentless manipulation of data to serve the vaccine agenda. Pretty direct language.
How does it say data was manipulated?
It claims data was perverted to inflate COVID risks and vaccine safety or efficacy, all to, quote, stoke public fear. It mentions public surveys supposedly showing huge misinformation, like the average Democrat believing 50% of infections led to hospitalization.
When the actual number, according to the book, was much lower.
Less than 1%, it claims. So the book argues telling people just to trust the experts is flawed, because science changes and experts disagree. The contention is deliberate misinformation to control the public.
Okay, let's shift to treatments. The book alleges a deliberate suppression of some early options.
Yes, this is a really central part of the argument. It focuses heavily on hydroxychloroquine HCQ and ivermectin.
Right. What does it say about HCQ?
Well, it points out HCQ was FDA approved for like 65 years, deemed safe by the CDC for lots of people, and frontline doctors were reporting amazing results with early use.
But that information didn't get out, according to the author.
The book alleges big tech platforms, Google, Facebook, they scrubbed information about HCQ's effectiveness.
And then the FDA stepped in.
Yes, the book claims the FDA pulled HCQ's emergency authorization. And it says this was based on trials that used unreasonably high doses on patients who were already hospitalized and started the drug way too late to be effective.
It also mentions the Gates Foundation in relation to dosing.
It does. It specifically accuses the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation of developing a dosing model that deliberately overestimated how much HCQ was needed.
And there were those controversial studies, too.
Yeah.
Surgisphere.
Right. The ones in The Lancet and New England Journal of Medicine. The book calls them shockingly clumsy con jobs based on ridiculously erroneous data. The book says 200 scientists exposed the flaws. It even quotes Dr. Harvey Risch from Yale saying HCQ could have cut deaths by 50%.
And is it a similar narrative for ivermectin?
Pretty much, yeah. The author claims there was a coordinated campaign by NIH, FDA, CDC to slander it as just a horse dewormer.
Despite its use elsewhere.
Exactly. The book points to places like India, Indonesia, Israel, El Salvador, where ivermectin led to immediate dramatic drops in COVID deaths.
And why would it be suppressed? Any motive suggested?
It links it directly to Merck's drug molnupiravir, calls ivermectin a low-profit competitor, and suggests Merck stood to make billions from its own antiviral if ivermectin was sidelined.
And there are quotes supporting this view.
Yeah, it quotes Dr. Pierre Corey saying Fauci's suppression of early treatments will cause history to record 500,000 unnecessary deaths in ICUs. And Dr. Ryan Cole saying early treatment was just overtly neglected like never before.
Okay, moving on. The book also makes some very strong claims about the COVID-19 vaccines themselves, safety concerns, and how information was managed.
Yes, it raises this idea of pathogenic priming, or ADE, antibody-dependent enhancement.
What does that mean?
It's the concern that the vaccine might overstimulate the immune system in a way that actually leads to more severe illness or death if someone is later exposed to the wild virus.
A serious concern. Does it critique the trials?
It does. It criticizes the Pfizer trial specifically, claiming they were cut short at 6 months and that the control group was vaccinated, which made it impossible, the book argues, to detect long-term injuries.
I see.
And it makes this claim about internal AHRQ studies, that's the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, showing serious injuries in 1 out of 40 recipients, studies the book says were then killed by the CDC.
That's a huge claim. Does the book offer data to back up these safety concerns?
It analyzes Pfizer's own published 6-month trial data. And based on that analysis, it claims there was actually no mortality benefit from the vaccine.
No benefit. It claims something else.
It claims that for every life saved from COVID, the data showed 4 excess heart attack fatalities.
Yeah.
And overall, 42.8% more deaths in the vaccine group than the placebo group in that time frame.
Wow. And it mentions VAers too, right? The reporting system.
Heavily. It calls VAGers dysfunctional, and it suffers from chronic undercounting, like over 99% understatement of actual events.
But even with that alleged undercounting.
Even then, the book says VAers recorded unprecedented waves of deaths and injuries after the COVID shots. It cites numbers like over 16,000 deaths, nearly 780,000 injuries in the U.S., and 40,000 deaths, 2.2 million adverse reactions in Europe between late 2020 and October 2021.
It compares this to
the 1976 swine flu vaccine, which it says was linked to 25 deaths, so a massive difference.
And how does the book say this information, or maybe the lack of it, reached the public?
It points to CDC Director Walensky's statement in August 2021 about 98% of hospitalizations and deaths being among the unvaccinated.
Okay, I remember that.
The book calls that blatant fraud. It argues the statistic used data from early 2021 when most people were unvaccinated, making it misleading.
Ah, I see the critique. Does it offer counter data?
It cites data from Scotland and Israel suggesting that at certain points, vaccinated people actually made up the majority of hospitalizations or deaths in some outbreaks.
Censorship.
Big time. The book alleges widespread media censorship. It gives the example of an ABC Detroit Facebook post asking for stories of unvaccinated COVID deaths.
And what happened?
Instead, the post apparently got flooded with over 230,000 comments. mostly heartbreaking stories of vaccine injuries and deaths. The core argument is that a specific narrative was forced and inconvenient information suppressed.
Okay, so the book doesn't just focus on COVID. It puts these criticisms into a much broader historical context, right? Going back decades.
Exactly. A huge chunk of the book is dedicated to the AIDS crisis and the drug AZT. The author basically describes the AZT approval process as a kind of shakedown cruise, a template for what allegedly happened later.
A template for Fauci's practices.
Yes, it claims Fauci initially stoked fear about AIDS spreading through casual contact, which wasn't true. Then he obstructed cheap, unpatented, repurposed drugs that showed promise.
Oh,
By demanding these super expensive gold standard trials, which the book claims his own agency, NIA, didn't even fund for those alternative treatments, it also alleges he rigged certain trials, like one called AL-721, to make sure they failed.
and it mentions science by press release.
Yeah, claiming Fauci pioneered this tactic to control the narrative about drugs like AZT without waiting for peer review.
What about the AZT trials themselves, the ones that did happen?
The book alleges they were riddled with fatal methodological flaws, corruption, even deliberate falsification of data, claiming that the pharmaceutical investigators running the trials were basically incentivized to lie about whether patients were surviving or not.
And the drug itself, AZT.
The book calls AZT the most toxic drug ever approved for long-term use. It argues it didn't just treat AIDS, it actually caused a condition the book labels AIDS by AZT.
Wow. And it attributes deaths to it.
It estimates 330,000 deaths among gay men between 1987 and 2019 were due to AZT toxicity, not necessarily HIV itself. A very, very strong historical claim.
And the book even questions the fundamental link between HIV and AIDS.
It does. It highlights what it called HIV heresies. It quotes Nobel laureate Kary Mullis, the inventor of PCR, who famously said consensus is politics, not science.
Right.
It details another Nobel laureate, Luc Montagnier, who co-discovered HIV, apparently confessing in 1990 that HIV might actually be benign, and it mentions Peter Duesberg's long-standing criticisms.
And these AIDS without HIV cases.
Yes, the book discusses people who had AIDS-like symptoms but no HIV. It claims Fauci just relabeled this condition idiopathic CD4 plus lymphocytopenia, or ICL, effectively dismissing it. It also brings up the alleged suppression of the theory that Popper's alkyl nitrites contributed to early AIDS cases. The argument is that dissenting science was squashed.
Going beyond AIDS, the book uses this term medical colonialism and talks about human experimentation.
Yeah, it asserts this really disturbing history of U.S. agencies, including NIAID under Fauci, experimenting on vulnerable populations.
What kind of experiment?
It specifically discusses NIAID-funded HIV drug trials on Black and Hispanic orphans in foster care.
Orphans.
Yes, claiming even healthy children were given highly toxic drugs. Sometimes feeding tubes were surgically implanted to force compliance. The book documents 80 deaths in these trials.
That's incredibly disturbing. Are there other examples?
It talks about neverpene trials in Africa, again alleging serious safety problems, lost records, thousands of unreported adverse events leading to deaths like that of a woman named Joyce Ann Hafford.
And Bill Gates gets linked into this part of the narrative too.
Yes, the book links Gates and the BMGF. It argues their funding, often channeled through WHO and JVI, which Gates co-created, pushes vaccines disproportionately over basic needs like clean water or sanitation. The book calls this pharma colonialism.
Any specific examples given?
It mentions Depo-Provera, a contraceptive, being given to poor women in Ghana without proper informed consent, supposedly to reduce birth rates. It also cites claims from Kenyan Catholic bishops about a tetanus vaccine campaign being a hidden mass sterilization program. And it criticizes Gates' polio vaccine campaign in India, claiming it caused outbreaks of vaccine-derived polio. The overall assertion is a pattern of exploitation disguised as aid.
Finally, the book ties all these threads together with this concept of a rising biosecurity state and something called germ games.
Right. This section argues that after the Cold War, this biosecurity agenda emerged to justify ongoing defense spending. And vaccines, the book claims, became a kind of cover, a euphemism for reviving the bioweapons industry.
And Fauci's NIAID role in this.
The book claims NII essentially transformed into an arm of the defense sector under his leadership.
And the germ games? What were those?
These were pandemic simulations like Dark Winter, SPARS pandemic, and most famously Event 201, which happened just before COVID, often run by Johns Hopkins, often funded or co-organized by the Gates Foundation.
And the book's interpretation of these simulations.
It claims they weren't just planning exercises, they were training and signaling exercises for officials. Rehearsals, basically,
Rehearsals for what?
for managing pandemics in a specific way, anticipating public resistance to things like vaccines, planning how to use fear-based propaganda, how to muzzle talk of lab origins, how to stamp out disinformation with help from the media.
So prepping for narrative control.
Exactly. It mentions the term infodemiology, tracking dissenting views. It suggests the public was being manipulated in a huge population-wide Milgram experiment, referencing those obedience studies, and it explicitly links Event 201 to the Great Reset agenda. The argument is that the pandemic response wasn't improvised. It followed a pre-planned biosecurity playbook.
Wow. Well, that was certainly a profound and at times pretty unsettling dive into Robert S. Kennedy Jr.'s The Real Anthony Fauci. It weaves this incredibly complex narrative across decades.
It really does, connecting public health policy, science, finance, intelligence, all through the lens of the specific and severe criticisms.
Yeah. And as we explored, the author's clear intention seems to be to make readers question the narratives they've heard, look past the surface, and really consider the web of influences that shape global health decisions.
From those financial incentives we started with, all the way to things like intelligence agencies and these germ games.
The book is definitely presented as a call for much more critical thinking, more transparency in public health. It really challenges you to confront some uncomfortable ideas and scrutinize information sources.
Which leads us to a pretty important question raised by the themes in this book. What does it mean for all of us when the lines between public health, powerful corporate interests, and national security seem to get increasingly blurry? And maybe more importantly, how do we, as citizens trying to stay informed, navigate that complex landscape moving forward?